tasks today. So, just like everyone in this room, my job is to be a storyteller, right? And I want to talk a little bit about the power of narrative, but normally I'm telling other people's stories. And I got all ready and I sent Eric my slides and he was like, yeah, that's great, but you're telling your story. And so I will tell you, this is probably the most uncomfortable conversation that I've had, even though I talk about a lot of injustice and a lot of things that go on. But the power of narrative is overwhelming, and it's something that I think I learned pretty early. So I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But a year after I graduated, I went back and I was having lunch with one of the deans, and he said to me, you grew up poor, didn't you? And I was like, I did. And he did too. And he said, and I can tell, because when you grow up poor, you're always waiting to be found out. And that was something that has stuck with me forever, which is, I can wait to be found out, or I can tell my story and it's mine. And that is exactly what it is like for our clients every day, where someone doesn't listen to them, no one's believing them, and no one is letting them tell the story in their own terms. And that's what we do and what we work on. So, a little bit about me. This is my family. My family's from Mexico. I'm the first in my family to go to college from a working class family. This is my grandmother's green card down in the bottom left. This is me and my cousin last week, actually. I found out my cousin moved to rural Iowa, where the prisons are, and I was visiting rural Iowa to go to prison, and I met my cousin. Fun fact. But it was one of those really fascinating things, because she and I are the only two people who have ever left our hometown. So I'm from California, which to us is a small town. It's about 200,000 people, which is, I guess, not that small. But it's a beach town that is all agriculture, not a lot of service jobs or anything else. And my whole family's there, literally, everybody. And me and my cousin Andy are the only people who have ever left. I left to go to school, and she left because she was gay, and it was not a safe place for her to be to grow up in a Mexican family in the 70s. And so here we are now, fast forward 40 years later, meeting and finding out that our stories are the same, and that that's something that can resonate with us even though we never met before. So I grew up, I graduated from high school, and I went to a school called Bucknell, which is in rural Pennsylvania. I don't know how much y'all know about Bucknell, but if you are from a kind of poor, diverse family, going to the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania with a bunch of rich white folks is kind of a shock. And that's what it was. It was less than 7% diversity when I got there. And a lot of things that I maybe even thought about myself or about my family were really challenged. And I had to really decide, how is it that I feel? And maybe y'all haven't noticed, but I'm pretty white. But I am Latina, and that matters to me. My mother's maiden name is Rojo, my father was adopted, so my last name is Bushnell, but every time that you all see me, you see me on the stage, you see a white person. And every time I go into a room, people see a white person. Even though it doesn't matter that my family is Latino and has the same exact experiences as other Latinos in this community. I grew up watching my family members get arrested. We had a police scanner that we would listen to every night to see, where is everybody? We heard my brother, right here, it's me and my niece and nephew and my sister-in-law, my brother getting stopped at the beach one time while he was on a date. And the police came and they heard that there was a robbery and there was a Mexican man, and so my brother gets stopped and they search the car and they hold him, and it's not until his white girlfriend's parents went down to the station and said, no, they were on a date, we know that, but they let him go. And then that weekend, she broke up with him because his parents said, well, he didn't do this, but maybe he did something. And so, I've spent a lot of time being the people that I represent. And when I went to school, I originally went to be an immigration lawyer. So I went to law school in New York City, and that's where I went the wrong way, you told me down. That's where I met Brian Stevenson. Many of you probably know him now. He's very famous. He has a book out. I mean, that's Michael Dean, or he's going to play him, right, in movies. He was a professor at my law school. And he gives this very inspirational speech. It's a TED Talk now. You want to Google it. And for the first time in several years, Brian offered a clinic to go down to Alabama, where you could work on death penalty cases with him. And that's what I did. So my last semester of law school, I spent in Alabama working on the case of Emmanuel Gissendaner, who's this man right here. And in the death penalty context, there are two parts to a case. There's the guilt phase, did they do it or not, right? And there's the sentencing phase. Do we believe this is a person who should be sentenced to life without parole or death at the hands of the state? Those are the only two options in a capital case, okay? And so we go down, and this is Mr. woman who was murdered in her carport. There's blood everywhere, all over the carport. Her body's been moved. It's now found in the woods near where his family lives, and her body's covered in tree branches, right? Mr. Gissendanner is seen driving her car around all day. He's cashed a check from her bank account to himself, and he's got a speck of her blood on his sock. Good facts, yeah? We look at it and we say, we're going to focus on the sentencing phase, right? We're going to say, Mr. Gissendanner should not have been sentenced to death. But as we started to investigate, what we realized is actually, Mr. Gissendanner was actually innocent. And no one had ever listened to him to understand what really happened. And through our investigation, just at that time, just as law students, what we learned is Aaron, this is his middle name, is what he goes by, Aaron had been a high school football star. He was supposed to go to the University of Alabama to play on a scholarship to play football, but his girlfriend got pregnant, so he didn't go. And he grew up in a small town in Alabama, and there weren't a lot of opportunities, so he was selling drugs on the side of this highway. And one day, this man named Buster came up in a car and said, "Hey man, won't you pawn that car to me for drugs?" So it's an exchange. It happens here in Kansas City all the time. I give you drugs, you let me rent the car, right? So he does that. It's a hot Alabama summer day. Aaron's super excited about it. He had recently just broken his toe, so he was wearing these sandals, but his socks were in his back pocket. So he's walking around the car, he goes and he sees what he thinks is a speck of red dirt on the bumper. He wipes that off with the sock, and the blood was only right on the heel of the sock, one tiny speck, which would have been inconsistent with somebody having hit a woman and covered the whole carport in blood, that's the only speck of blood. So he gets in the car, he starts driving around, and I swear he picks up everyone he knows. Like, he drives to some other town, and he's so excited to have this car. And at some point, they go and they're going to go to the club for the night, and they go and they park, and the car breaks down. And so Aaron's like, oh my God. So he goes and he finds Buster, where he's staying in a hotel, and he says, oh man, I'm so sorry. But the car that you let me broke down. And Buster says, that's okay. Take this check, go to the bank, and take the money out to get the car out, and the rest is for what I owe you. And that's what Aaron does. He signs his name on the bottom, he puts his thumbprint right on it. And what the state didn't reveal is that they had a handwriting examiner look at it and realized it was 3 different handwritings, one of which was consistent with Buster and one which was consistent with his girlfriend, and they never disclosed that evidence, right? So what we later learned is Buster was a tree cutter, professional tree cutter. And the branches that were found on Miss Snellgrove's body were as thick as my wrist. They must have been cut with something. And he was scheduled to work at her house that morning. But nobody had ever listened to him. No one had ever bothered to say, you say you're innocent, let me just go see, right? And I think about this all the time of what it's like to be in the room and to really have nobody believe that I'm there. And that happens not just as a white person walking into really wealthy audiences and rooms and asking donors to help me and help my family, or my family being these folks who are up here, but to be someone who is to say, this is my experience and it matters, right? And that's the reality. Somebody looked at this poor black man and said, your experience doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me when you say it's something else. And so I would not be doing my job if I didn't have a quick experience. Is sort of why I'm angry all the time. People ask me, I get asked this all the time, how do you know how to do what you do? No, I don't either, because I live in a constant state of rage. And when people are like, oh, you're so happy, I'm like, no, this is actually just me regularly being angry. So, this is why, because this is what we do for a living. And I'm going to give you the fastest criminal justice class you've ever had. So I used to be a law professor at the University of Wisconsin. I used to teach a course on procedure. I'm going to give it to you in like 2 minutes, all right? So this is what life in the criminal case. And this is what you're used to seeing. Every case has to go through all these stages, all right? What you see on TV is this stage. This is, you have a right to an attorney, right? You can afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you. You go to the trial court, you have an attorney, you try to present all the evidence. Hopefully your attorney is objecting about everything. We tell students, if you don't know what to object about, just say the whole Constitution. Prove it all, right? And so they're running up and down saying, go let that evidence in. But too bad, so sad, our client, and I'm going to use male pronouns because the vast majority of our clients are men. Mr. Client loses, and he goes to the Court of Appeals. This court will only look at what your attorney jumped up and down about. So if there was something unfair that happened in your court and your attorney didn't say anything, too bad, so sad, they're not going to look at it. All right? So you go up and you go through, they're going to look at that, they're going to say there's no error, Missouri Supreme Court's going to look at it, they're going to say no error, Kansas. And then you get asked the U.S. Supreme Court, but they're like, I mean, really? We're only going to take 1% of all the cases that come to us, we don't have time. So too bad, so sad, that's your direct appeal. But this Mr. Client has an attorney here and has an attorney here. We should be looking out for, okay? Well, fast forward, and in most states you have somewhere between 90 to 180 days, in a couple states you have 3 years, to get into post-conviction. And in post-conviction, which is what I was doing for Mr. Gissendaner, I went back to the trial court. So here in Mr. Gissendaner's case, I went back to the court who sentenced him to death, the same judge. And what we said is, hey, we have new evidence, and if you had known this evidence, you would find that either it was unfair or he was actually innocent, right? So we have evidence of state misconduct, we have new DNA testing, we have witnesses who recanted, we have literally juror misconduct, anything that you just didn't know happened. We have that this guy, this attorney, was so terrible, but you couldn't have known because, he thought he was great, he presented himself great, but you can't know until right now when I show you how terrible he was. The problem is, while Mr. Client is trying to do this, he's incarcerated, he has no money, no investigator, and no right to an attorney. So how are you going to find all that new evidence? How are you going to find what the state suppressed? How are you going to find the witness who's going to recant? How are you going to get DNA testing in somewhere between 90 and 180 days with no one to help you? They don't. People lose all the time, even though there's something that could have and should have been done for them. So they go through this whole process again, right? Nobody's there to help them. Then they go and ask the federal court, and the federal court's going to say, well, did you raise it down here? If you didn't raise it down here, if somebody didn't already argue it in front of these courts, we're not going to look at it. And again, you have no right to counsel. You only have 1 year to get from box 3 to box 7. That's it. That's it. That's the life of a criminal case. Because we get asked all the time, why does it take so long? Why is it so hard? Because we designed it that way. We designed a system that values finality over fairness. Because the reality is, let's say it's been 4 years, and somebody comes forward and, oh, here's a good one. The victim of a murder shows up alive. Great evidence, right? The court says, I don't care. And that's what's happening right now in St. Louis. In Lamar Johnson's case, our client, where the prosecutor had all this evidence in their files that had been withheld of payments to the eyewitness. We had the real perpetrators confess, all of this great stuff. The prosecutor says that our client is innocent, and the attorney general has come in and said, well, he should have filed that 24 years ago. Nobody is listening to anyone's story. And nobody is talking about why it matters and what is so powerful about it. And what happens when we care and we bring it forward is we can find a little bit of justice. And so that's what we do at the Midwest Innocence Project, is we try to talk to folks and we see what happens, but we lose. And there becomes a question of what really is justice. So this is Aaron, who I talked about. I started this case in 2006, right? In 2010, we won him a new trial in front of a judge who said that he was actually innocent, and that the state had suppressed all his evidence. In 2013, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals reinstated that conviction. He remained on death row. And this February, he walked out after the Alabama Supreme Court overturned his conviction and the state offered him a plea deal. So he's still a convicted murderer, but he's home. Is that justice? No. I don't know. I mean, he's certainly not going to die. That's better. But this is the reality. If we aren't looking at what's happening and who we are, says as much about what we do as a society says as much about who we are as what it says about Aaron. And I think about that when I walk into the room. When I walked up on stage and y'all thought, here's another white lady to tell her story, that says just as much about you as it says about me. And that some of you are probably also running all these questions. Well, why is her name Tricia? It says just as much about you and the things that you value as it does about my life experience. And how we design the criminal justice system says everything about who we are as a society. We've designed a system that cares about finality over fairness. What we've said is, all you get is procedure, the outcome doesn't matter. If the procedure is fair, the outcome must be fair. We don't care if we get it wrong. And so that's what we're constantly trying to challenge. So you see, here's our client, Ricky Kidd. Ricky is another perfect example of someone whose story wasn't heard. He was freed here just 2 weeks ago, here in Kansas City. You all may have heard about him, but he had an alibi at the time of the crime, but nobody investigated it. It's a double homicide, and during the crime, he was at a sheriff's department getting a gun Ricky served 23 years because nobody listened to him. And the true story is we don't know if he may have to go back in. So the reality is in the federal system, folks, we don't know if innocence is a reason to be let out of prison. It seems insane to say out loud, but we don't know if innocence is a reason to be let out of prison. What the federal courts have said is innocence is a reason for us to let you overcome that you're too late, all those procedural rules. But in Ricky's case, they said it was. The court said, I find he's actually innocent here under Missouri law, and I'm going to let him out. And what we don't know is if the state's going to appeal that because they don't want that to be the rule. And that's what I mean. I don't know how to say it any other way, but that is the world of what we live in. And so I started this story a little bit talking about, why I started this work and why I left my family. But the reality is I ended up with a family. So these are some of my former clients doing literally everything. This is me and Faye at New Year's Eve this year. She was released after serving 26 years for a crime she didn't commit when she was arrested when she was 16 years old. I got married 3 years ago. At my wedding, 3 of my former clients were there. There's power in seeing people who have an experience like yours. I grew up my whole life with folks telling me I wasn't Mexican enough or white enough, right? I grew up saying this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. I also grew up without a lot of opportunities or people to help me. I have this nice fancy resume now. No one ever gave me a call for me. I took every job I ever had cold. I applied, no one opened that door. And so when I look and I see and I meet these folks who tell me what is happening to them, I take it to be true. But I also know that everything that they are doing is their story and that they are fighting for it. I'm not opening a door for them. I'm simply telling their story. And there's power in that. And there's power in the mass narrative. And the power comes from everyone together. We cannot do this alone. I point to these 2 cases. This is Lamar Johnson in St. Louis. This is Marcellus Williams, whose execution we stopped 3 years ago. 2 days, literally hours before he was supposed to be executed. Because you all cared. Because people took the time to pick up the phone. DNA evidence says that Marcellus Williams didn't commit that crime and he was scheduled to be executed. His story didn't matter until you made it matter. And that's what I think about. My life is just a life. It's the same as everyone else. Everyone in here has a story. But it matters when I connect it to someone else. When I am affirmed in someone else. When they bring their existence to me and we can do this together. And so that's my challenge to you. What is it in your life that will help you connect to someone else to bring a little bit more justice? Because you're not alone. You just maybe haven't seen your story on stage before.